if you give women more money, they don't want men as much. Relationships are transacted, and if that doesn't happen, we don't have a relationship. The main problem that men have is they think that women mean what women say.
I think this is something that most men think about, is like men don't necessarily need money to attract women.
Oh, no, they don't.
They don't.
Yeah, I think I made an episode a while back called What Works on Women, or the 3 things that work on women. Let's see if I can remember. The first, which you've already discussed, is being able to stimulate a woman's emotions, which is primarily linguistic. You have to be able to evoke an emotional response. It doesn't have to even be a positive response. In fact, what people have learned is what can be even more stimulating is a combination of, let's say, positive and negative emotional experiences. Too many positive experiences get boring, unfortunately. And boring is the absence of emotional stimulation. It's like the one emotion that doesn't work with women. The first is confidence. Like if you're a young guy and you don't have money, you don't have status, you don't have a lifestyle, you don't have fame, you don't have skills, you don't have abs.
Well, you might have abs if you're young.
You could have abs. I mean, at the very least, that's something that you could do through your own discipline. And it actually doesn't cost you anything, because abs are generally subtraction. It's not addition. It's like eating less and they're made in the kitchen, not in the gym. But the one thing you absolutely must have if you want a chance with women as a young man is confidence. And confidence doesn't cost anything, right? And it's something that it might take a little practice to build a kind of an emotional callus, because you're going to get shot down a lot. I think of kind of approaching women to be something like baseball, like the best Hall of Fame hitters still struck out more than they got a hit. And confidence is easier to have when you have an established track record of success. And so that's generally the pushback I get from guys. Be like, yeah, dude, I'd be confident if I had $1 million and I had, a beautiful wife. And, it's like, yeah, it's kind of easy to be confident then. So you kind of have to fake it till you make it. Like you can have what I call psychotic confidence, which is belief in yourself before there's any evidence to support that belief. That's what kind of makes it a belief. And you have to believe in yourself before anybody else does, because nobody else will for a very long time. And then suddenly everyone is going to think, oh yeah, that guy, I love that guy. Like nothing happens for a very long time until everyone kind of more or less decides that, yeah, that's cool. You've made it on some level.
Was confidence your secret? Because you said as a broke theater actor in New York, you got laid more than a successful doctor.
I'm doing pretty well for myself these days, but I was broke as a joke, man, and I was living in public housing in Brooklyn. It was month to month. There were women who wouldn't tell their friends that they were coming home with me, And back then, I really wanted to have a wife and to have a girlfriend. People generally want what they don't or can't have at any given time, right? My secret was I was pretty psychotically confident. Like I was very sure of myself, and God knows where that came from. But the third thing, is that I was also a contextual alpha. A contextual alpha means that you are on top of a status hierarchy. And as an actor, that's what was going on. So I was often the leading man in these shows. Now, sometimes there was 10 people in the audience, but I was the lead actor for those 10 people. You know what I'm saying? You could be the lead guitarist for 2 guys at the local bar on a Tuesday. You know what I'm saying? So if you're on stage and everyone's looking at you and focusing on you and clapping for you, et cetera, like there's something of something gets transferred onto you. It's almost like a totem. It's almost like it's like magic, right? That really does help. So the great thing about being a contextual alpha is you don't have to be like, there's so many different scenes that you can be a part of. And if you can't find a scene where you can be near the top, you can create your own. I mean, that's also hard work, but it's hard work to ascend a status hierarchy that pre-exists. So it's like, pick your heart, guy. The good news about building your own is that you build it around you with your own strengths and preferences and interests. So you're much more likely to have people who are into what you're doing because they come to you, and to remain in that position for an extended period of time.
Guys, we've been so passionate about finding the biggest geniuses, and this is just one of the many episodes. If you want to make sure you don't miss the next one, make sure to subscribe. All right, let's get back to the episode. You said what works to attract someone and what works to keep them are two entirely different things. I think most people maybe would assume, hey, if I can get someone, then I can keep them.
No.
Okay, why is that wrong?
Well, there's a few things here. So first of all, I talk about in the book that every relationship progresses through three distinct phases. There's attraction, negotiation, and maintenance. So negotiation often gets skipped over, but we got attraction and getting and keeping, attraction and maintenance, right? One thing you have to understand is that once a phase starts, it never ends. So that's the first mistake that people make. What does that mean? That means that sometimes people go through the trouble of getting somebody, attracting somebody, and then once the relationship is stable, they think that they just have to worry about maintenance. No. Once attraction starts, it never stops. It's just that now you also have to do attraction and negotiation. And then once that starts and it's successful, that never stops either. You now have to do attraction and negotiation and maintenance. So one of the things that people get wrong is they think, well, I'm in the maintenance phase. I don't have to worry about attraction anymore. No, wrong. In general, it's a very good idea to continue to be and do the things, be the person and do the things that your partner was attracted to begin with. We undermine the bases of our own attraction to our own detriment mutually. So that's the first thing, is that even though we're in maintenance, we still have to worry about attraction, which generally means keeping ourselves in decent shape, dressing in a way that is attractive to your partner, doing things that keep you alive and interesting and excited and good to be around, et cetera, et cetera. But attraction and maintenance are totally different things. Attraction is like marketing. Often what works is bold and emotional. Like any successful marketing campaign doesn't sell the product. It either sells the solution, or more commonly, it sells a completely unrelated attitude. Like Coke doesn't sell carbonated sugar water. It sells joy and friendship. You look at these medications that are sold to the general public. They don't sell a herpes remedy. They sell going to the beach and playing tennis with friends. You know what I'm saying? It has nothing to do with the product at all. But that's kind of what works with respect to the attraction, is that herpes medication, not so sexy. So we're going to pair that through it's almost like a classical conditioning thing. We're going to pair that with an emotional stimulus that people enjoy, that will be memorable, that will resonate. And eventually, when they take that medication, they might even get to the point where they're thinking they're on the beach. Beer commercials do that great. There's a bunch of guys sitting in dark bars drinking bad beer, thinking that they're in some beer commercial playing volleyball with hotties on a beach somewhere. Like, that's how amazing successful advertising campaigns are. But if your product sucks, it's hard to keep people. Like, you'll have a lot of churn. For some products, that's okay. But in general, most products want repeat customers. And that means that your product also has to be good. So if they take the first sip of your beverage and spit it out, they're going to think, I was fooled by the market, and I'm not going to do that again. So the company did get a sale, but probably isn't great for their long-term solvency.
Is there a moment in every relationship, I think it's what you call the crisis of disappointment, where the fantasy shatters and the real relationship either begins or dies?
Yeah.
Is that in the negotiation phase?
No, that's still in the attraction phase. So that could be the end of the attraction phase and potentially the beginning of negotiation.
Right.
So I call it the crisis of disillusionment. So a great deal of attraction is based on projected fantasy. I am seeing what I want to see, and because I'm attracted, I am going to fill in the gaps in my knowledge base with what I would prefer to see there, which is generally what people do. We can call that a kind of halo effect. The issue is that it's only a matter of time before that projected fantasy comes into contact with reality. So either something big happens, or there's just been an accumulation of small things or inconsistencies, and then they aggregate, a critical mass is reached, and everything kind of shatters. And you're staring at this person almost for the first time, like, who are you? Like, you're the same person I was seeing before. They might even look different within your perception. And this is when the relationship can potentially begin. Before, it was actually a hall of mirrors. Like, I'm using the shattering imagery intentionally. You're not actually seeing the person, you're seeing yourself reflected back on the surface of that person. Your own, in yourself, I mean your projected fantasies. That shatters, and so now you potentially see the other person for the first time. Great. It's great because you're probably not that invested in the relationship yet. Like, you might have been having a wild time, and if you didn't keep a rein on your emotions after 6 months of the honeymoon phase, maybe you're already engaged. Maybe you've introduced this person to all of your friends and family, and you're very emotionally invested. Probably a mistake, right? It's not a good idea to really invest emotionally until after the crisis of disillusionment, because you actually don't know what you're investing in, right? So now that you can begin to see the other person clearly, you can say, oh, this is who you really are. Okay, so maybe there are things here that I can work with. Maybe you do have the skills and the resources and the traits that I'm looking for with respect to my relationship goals. Great, we're going to tentatively move forward. Or I'm going to say, wow, I just don't know what happened and I don't feel the same way anymore. I'm so sorry. And you cut your losses because you're probably not that far into the relationship at this point. And that's probably for the best than trying to fight to keep somebody in your life who seems to be looking for the door.
What happens later on in the relationship? So after you've went on and now you're in maintenance phase and you're still trying to keep the attraction, everything going, what's happening psychologically when one person stops loving their partner?
Well, you have to define love for me, because that's the tricky word in that question. What do you think love is?
Look, I think depends on the person, but I think for some men, let's just say hypothetically, right? It could be, the physical went away slowly over time. There was attraction. They first met. It's like when you're dating someone and you text the girl the eggplant emoji and she texts you back, and then it's just boom, it's on, versus that same relationship, let's say 3-5 years down the line, when the same guy, same girl, you text her the eggplant emoji and she texts you back, oh, you're disgusting, get away. It's like, what's changed?
Well, what's changed is her attraction. So I made an episode about this called The Lens of Attraction. Everything that you do is perceived through a woman's lens of attraction. And this is related to the crisis of disillusionment that we're saying, because that's a huge hit to attraction. They're much more likely to be attracted to their own projected fantasies than the reality of who you are, no matter who you are. The fantasy is always better than the reality. That's what makes it a fantasy, right? So even if you are a gorgeous, rich, A-list Hollywood actor who actually wants to settle down and have a family, that's still going to be not as good as her projected fantasy. The same behavior looks different depending on the level of attraction. And we already know this. Like, every trait has two kind of linguistic conventions about it. We could say on the one hand that I am a man of principle and I'm convicted, or you could say that I'm stubborn and willful. We could say that I'm discreet and I pick my battles, or you could say that I'm cowardly and meek. You could say that you are a gourmand and with a refined palate, or I could say that you're a glutton who doesn't know how to say no. It's the same behavior. It's just that I've already decided in the one case to feel positively about it, and in the other case to feel negatively about it. It can't actually be about the thing being discussed, because it's exactly the same in both cases. So what's changed? The thing hasn't changed. The other person, the behavior hasn't changed. I've changed. And so if the eggplant emoji isn't working like it used to, that could be a canary in the coal mine, in the sense that for whatever reason, and there's always reasons, we don't always know them, but there's always reasons, that woman's attraction for that man has decreased significantly. Maybe all at once, but probably more likely slowly and gradually over time. And if I were working with that person, I would try to troubleshoot what that could be and to get it back online.
To push the attraction, to stimulate her emotionally, to get things going, and then...
Well, yeah, because a woman who's not attracted to a man, she's going to perceive all of his behavior and all of his traits in the negative category. And I think that's why she's kind of building a case for why she needs to leave. Women are more loyal to their feelings, and men are more loyal to their commitments in relationship, which is interesting because neither one of them are technically loyal to the other person. But when a woman's feelings change and the attraction dips, then everything looks negative, and she's building a rational case for why she might need to exit the relationship.
Let's talk about body count. I've heard people say that it shouldn't matter. Some people care, some people don't care about it. What's your take on body count?
I mean, it clearly matters to a lot of men. And there's probably good reasons for why that is the case. Personally, I think that with respect to the success of a long-term relationship, it's probably more important to be that woman's first love than to be her first sexual experience. If you're the first man that she really loves and that she's very attracted to, there's kind of an imprint that leaves on a person's mind or that person's heart. And that's really what's more important than if she has an intact hymen, in my opinion. I also believe that men can be monomaniacally focused on the number. And for better or for worse, men are probably never going to know the truth about what that number really is. And also that women tend to count differently than men do.
Okay, explain that. How are they counting differently?
Well, you got to think like sure, you got to think like a lawyer here. Okay, it's so like that doesn't count.
You mean counting differently? They're lying, or counting differently depending on what type of sexual experience it was?
I mean, they can lie. Women lie, men lie, but they don't. In counting differently, they don't think of it as lying. They just think that one doesn't really count. Maybe it doesn't count because it wasn't vaginal intercourse. Maybe it doesn't count because she was drunk. Maybe she doesn't count because she regrets it. Maybe it doesn't count because it only lasted 30 seconds. Who knows? But these are all ways that it cannot count with women. And I don't think most men would agree with the accounting.
So do you think body count, okay, let's talk about, someone out there that's, let's say 30 to 45, they're dating.
Their age is 30 to 45?
30 to, sorry, not body count. Okay. Well, maybe it's higher or lower than body count, but they're 30 to 45 years old, they're dating. Does a high body count in a woman predict anything meaningful about her as a long-term partner, do you think?
The research seems to suggest that it does, yeah.
And what does that show?
Well, it does, it's kind of extrapolated. For example, there's data that show that the divorce rate is lowest when the woman is a virgin. It is not as low, but still significantly lower when she has only one body. It's not as low, so that we can extrapolate kind of a correlation. It's probably not strictly linear because the top 1 or 2% of both men and women really tend to skew the numbers. It's like the median number of sexual partners in a man is 1, or it might even be 0, especially under 30. But that's not the same as the average. Median is a type of average, but it's not the mean. So it gets kind of complicated there. The thought is that the more bodies a man or a woman has, the less able that person is to pair bond in a long-term relationship. I think that might be more true of women than of men, though I do know men, I've met them, who kind of get lost in the game. They just become players, and they might even be sex addicted. Their numbers are astronomical, and they've kept such a tight rein on their emotions that they might not know how to unclench that in a relationship. But I think it's very difficult. I made another episode about this where, as I said previously, I think it's more important to be, if possible, the first man a woman really loves. And if you can't be that, then you absolutely have to be the best man she's ever had. And that's also what makes it challenging as a woman has more bodies. So let's say on the extreme case, she's got 50. You're number 50. what's the likelihood that you're going to be better than the other 49 guys, like in every capacity? You're going to be, that's, 2%, just as in a random thing, but you're going to be the 2% lover. You're going to be the 2% in height and attractiveness and wealth and status and showing her emotional experiences. This is why when you go on TikTok, on Instagram, there's women who are talking to other women seriously, and they think, what's wrong with me? Like, I'm with a good man. I'm with a man who loves me, who cares for me, who gives me foot massages while we watch Sex and the City or whatever it is. But I'm still thinking about that one guy. And he didn't even treat me right. He didn't even commit to me. And it's like there was something about that emotional experience that imprinted itself on that woman's mind and heart. And it's made it difficult for her to be fully invested in her relation, even though she might be married for 10 years with kids. So that's kind of the danger with respect to that, in my opinion.